Do you feel there are any dangers in teaching centering prayer to people that we should be aware of? Yes, but not too many. I think I'd be a little cautious about teaching it to those who are in a depression or who are pre-psychotic, or even those who you feel are very, very vulnerable for some reason, highly sensitive, or who have perhaps just been in a great grief, a great loss, or a great divorce or something. Now, all of these people could be helped by centering prayer, but I think it would have to be mediated to them by someone with psychological skill and gradually and carefully and with great respect for where they are. Also, it depends on the group in which they are. In Snow Mass, the group is usually very supportive, so that some psychological difficulties are better handled there than they would be in a therapist's office, because there's an ongoing and permanent concern and charity from all that group that supports people in a marvelous way through some difficulties that are really frightening from other perspectives. So we haven't had any serious, now we've been doing it 8 years, 9 years almost, any serious mental defects from this, although as a result of the practice, people have discovered they needed some long-range psychological help afterwards. And we were able to direct them to that in perhaps a way they would not have realized how much they needed it or would have done it. So there are some hazards. There are also some hazards of those who are progressing normally on this practice, because when they get into the dark nights on the spiral staircase, if they're not aware or haven't assimilated or accepted the idea of the spiral staircase as a process of help, then some of their experiences in the dark nights can be very poignant and disconcerting in the extreme. So these people need ongoing help, mostly in the way of encouragement. They don't really need spiritual direction, because only someone who's been through it ahead of them would know what to say. But they do need someone, sometimes to encourage them that it's okay and they'll get through it, hold their hand, keep smiling, take a vacation. People need support in that state. And once in a while, this is added the further confusion of an awakening of Kundalini energy, which is not well known in the Christian tradition, but which is very real, and which is since the unconscious contains not only the negative elements of our personal history, but also the positive potentialities of human nature, one of which is the Kundalini energy that rises as a result of deep rest and asceticism, or the moderation of the emotional programs for happiness. When the emotions are quiet and the mind is quiet, then this energy seems to take off more likely than in other circumstances, though it can happen oddly, in odd circumstances, even through accidents, and in some Eastern quarters they deliberately arouse this energy, which I think could be dangerous. But most of us experience it well integrated into our prayer life, and we don't notice it. But some people have classical awakenings of it, in which case their bodies resonate to this energy. They experience pain in the throat, sometimes heat in the spine, sometimes their arms and hands assume various gestures that they can't control. We had one lady in one of the groups that when she was centering prayer, she couldn't help her hands going like that. Well, she nearly knocked a couple of people out. So if this energy is rising, it's better to be done in private, I think. But it's poignant to see how distressing this experience is, and its most important thing to do is to encourage people that it's perfectly normal. otherwise they would think they were going crazy, you know, because they can't control these asanas that are spontaneously arise in them. So without going into that a great deal, I would say that sometimes there arise some surprises in the spiritual journey, and this is where to be able to call up the national office and find someone who has some experience of these things can be extremely reassuring, even if you have to call from the Philippines. Because in my experience, it's the reassurance is perhaps the most important thing people need. And then they gradually get through it. But I've known some people who came into the meditation room, and as soon as they sat down, they practically went through the ceiling. I mean, there was just enough energy in the room before they even did centering prayer to set off this Kundalini energy. So what do you do with them? Well, obviously you tell them to be better to take a walk outside in the mountains during the times for centering prayer rather than sit here and just try to suppress what is almost irrepressible. It's a transitional period that, according to the literature, in which this is well known in Hindu and Buddhist circles, the body is preparing the cells, especially the cells in the brain, to be able to handle uninterrupted union with God, or the uninterrupted inflowing of grace morning, noon, and night. So it's the physiological base that some people need to put in for a very powerful and exuberant kind of mysticism, or if you prefer, enlightened state of mind. In other words, as our theology has always said, the body has a very important role to play, and it's the basis under which God can communicate more or less grace. So the body has to be prepared for divine union as well as the spirit. I think that's enough said on that subject, but we discuss some of these problems at what we call the Issues Workshop, which is for those who've been through most of our other programs and who might be encountering this in themselves or in the people they're working with. There's nothing to be afraid of. People need to be reassured. There's a great deal of ignorance about it in the Christian tradition. And if you went to a psychiatrist with these symptoms, you're lucky you'd be probably a month at the state institution on tranquilizers, trying to help you recover from this mystical experience.